titled The Final Leap. It was a crisp autumn morning, the kind where the sky seemed to hold its breath before letting the sun spill across the world. In the small town of Eldridge, nestled between thick woods and tall hills, lived a young woman named Clara. She was a skilled rock climber, known by all for her precision, strength and determination, but there was one mountain, one infamous cliff that she had never dared to conquer, the Blackstone Peak. Blackstone Peak was more than just a mountain. It was a test, a challenge, the symbol of everything the town revered. The summit was rumoured to be nearly impossible to reach, with sharp rocks, unpredictable weather and terrifyingly high drops. No one had ever made it to the top, but Clara knew that if she could, it would cement her place in Eldridge's legacy. For years, Clara had avoided the mountain, telling herself she wasn't ready. But as the days grew colder and the mountain remained in the distance, looming and silent, Clara couldn't ignore the call any longer. One evening, she stood at the edge of the town square, staring up at Blackstone Peak as the sun dipped behind it. Her best friend, Evan, stood beside her. "You're thinking about it again, aren't you?" Clara nodded, her heart pounding. "I've been practicing for years. I'm strong enough. But what if I fail? What if it's too much for me?" Evan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You won't fail. You've conquered every challenge along the way, and even if you do slip, you'll get up. That's what matters." The next morning, Clara packed her gear, strapped on her harness, and set off toward Blackstone Peak. She climbed steadily at first, feeling the familiar rush of adrenaline. But the higher she went, the harder it became. The rocks were slick with frost, and the wind howled through the jagged crevices. Clara's grip began to weaken, her muscles sore, but each time she stumbled she remembered Evan's words, "You'll get up." As she neared the final stretch, the clouds thickened, and a storm began to roll in. The wind picked up, and the temperature dropped sharply. The mountain felt alive, as though it were warning her to turn back. But Clara didn't stop. She couldn't. She was so close now. When she reached the final ledge, her heart leapt with joy, but also with fear. The last part was the most dangerous, an overhang with no visible footholds. To climb over it, she would need to trust her instincts completely. She stood there on the edge of everything, looking down at the world far below. What if I fall? But then she remembered, what if I fly? With one deep breath, Clara launched herself toward the ledge. Her hands found the rock, and her feet found purchase. For a moment she hung in the air, weightless, suspended between failure and triumph. And then, with a final surge of energy, she pulled herself up and over the top. Clara stood at the peak, gasping for breath, her heart racing. She had done it. She had conquered Blackstone Peak. As the storm passed and the sun began to break through the clouds, Clara looked down at the town below. The people of Eldridge, who had watched her from a distance, now saw her as more than just a climber. They saw her as a symbol of determination, courage and resilience. She realized that the mountain was never the real challenge. The true test had been overcoming her own fear. Moral: the greatest obstacles we face are often the fears we create in our own minds. True strength comes not from avoiding challenges, but from facing them head-on, even when the path seems impossible.